media spectrum where stories still matter. So, today we're going to be talking about The Housemaid. Now, I ended up seeing this pretty recently, kind of on just a whim. I was going to go see Send Help this last week, but when I was looking up the show times, I saw, much to my surprise, that The Housemaid was still playing. And I remember hearing a lot of positive reviews back on this, back when it came out in December. Cody Leach, one of my favorite YouTube movie critics, he in particular called it like one of the funnest movies of the year. And so I decided to go check that out while I still had a chance. And I am actually really, really glad that I got to see this one in theaters. And so for context, this is about a month and a half now that this movie has been out. And I went on just a Tuesday matinee and ended up having a crowd of 11 people, counting myself, which is not huge, but frankly that's better than a lot of movie crowds I've been to over the last year. Movies that have been out for a much shorter amount of time. Movies that were not necessarily R-rated, even hiding behind that gate. So that was a pretty impressive crowd. And it was just big enough to get some really good crowd reactions as the movie went on, to get some uncomfortable laughs, to get some big oohs and ahs, even some cheers at some of the big scenes at the end. So by the time you're watching this, it may well be out of theaters where you are. I've already seen people starting to react to it online, so I think it's starting to pop up on streaming. If you get the chance to see this in theaters, I definitely recommend it. If your only option is to watch it at home, that's fine. I just definitely recommend trying to get a couple friends together, trying to get at least someone to watch it with you, because I think this movie really does benefit from some sort of social experience. It is a movie that, by its nature, is kind of going for some big reactions in certain scenes, and it's funner with someone else for sure. Now, for this little review, I am going to have mostly non-spoiler, but I will have a section at the end where I do get into spoilers to talk about a couple of my critiques. But I will say, first off, this is a movie that is best gone into as blind as possible. I went into this knowing that it had Amanda Seyfried and Sydney Sweeney. I knew the basic setup that a girl starts working at a housemaid at a rich person's house. I wasn't even confident between the two of them which one was the housemaid and which one was the rich girl. That's like how little I knew. I knew that it got, like I said, a lot of positive reviews. I had heard a lot of comparisons to 90s style thrillers. I love the 90s. That's one of my favorite movie decades, so 90s throwback almost always piques my interest. I heard some Gone Girl comparisons, which I could definitely see. It's in that same sort of female lens, kind of noir genre, although this definitely goes in a... I say this not disrespectfully because it's totally intentional, but definitely goes in kind of a trashier sort of direction with it. This feels like a modern-day romance novel that goes very, very wrong. It's fascinating. But yeah, I would go in just knowing that, and nothing more than that. It's a movie that is really best experienced as blind as possible, because it's a movie with lots of twists and turns, and the more you know, the easier it'll be to guess certain things, and it's just funner if you don't guess things. Okay, so first, in talking about this movie critically, I have to talk about the acting. There are some side characters and side actors who all do fine in their roles, but the overwhelming focus of this movie is on three people. So we have Sydney Sweeney as Millie, the girl who's coming to be the housemaid. We have Amanda Seyfried, who I will always know from Mean Girls, of course.
It's like I have ESPN or something. My breasts can always tell when it's gonna rain. Really?
She's Nina, the wife. And then finally there's Brendan Sklenar, who I've never heard of before, never seen before, but immediately gives huge movie star vibes. I would not be at all surprised to see him as like a Batman or someone down the line. He just gives that type of huge star energy, and I would not be surprised to see him in a lot more things after this. And he's the husband Andrew in this trio. First, Amanda Seyfried as Nina is incredible. Like I said, I mainly only know her from Mean Girls. I feel like I've seen her in one or two other things, but couldn't tell you what. I did not know she was capable of this level of performance. She does so good as a character with some really big moments who could so easily go off the rails into being just an unbelievable cartoon character. But she goes just big enough while keeping it just grounded enough to keep this seemingly batshit crazy housewife believable as a human being. And keeping her believable keeps her terrifying. And occasionally darkly comical, but mostly terrifying, where she could so easily go off the rails. So huge credit to her for her performance in this movie. Then there's Brendan Sklenar, and I am convinced that this is not even a real man. See, what happened was the thirstiest housewife you've ever frickin' met spent a fortnight to 3 months, somewhere in that time frame, alone with Sora, creating the perfect, down to the last molecular atom, perfect cover model for her trashy romance novel, and then it just wandered out of the screen into the real world. And he's not just good looking, he is so charming. Like, he is so believable as one of the most dangerously charming men you've ever met. And without going into spoilers yet, the places this movie takes him to, and the layers he has to show when it is time to show those layers, incredible. He does an absolutely incredible performance as Andrew the husband. And then there's Sydney Sweeney. And this is actually the first thing I've seen Sydney Sweeney act in. I know of her, I've heard of her, I've seen her, I've seen little ads, she's in little trailers and things, so I definitely know of her, but I have no desire to watch Euphoria. That's just so not my thing. I'm not the audience for that. I know she's done other things. I actually am really interested in that boxing movie she did last year. I know it kind of tanked, but that's like one that I would definitely want to see on streaming whenever it comes out, to see if she can give more of a performance. In this, she's fine. She's not bad. She's not offensive. It's just like, how do I put it? She's like a slice of buttered toast. You know, she doesn't move her face that much. She has kind of just the same blank expression, even when going into some really extreme situations. Her voice rarely raises or lowers. Even in just these scenes with minor characters, by all due respect to them, unknown actors, they outshine her. Even the child. Every single actor she goes up against outshines her as just acting ability goes. She is just a perfect example of a very pretty person who can remember their lines, make their cues, and regulate their voice just enough to get by as a quote-unquote actor. Like I said, this is the only role I've actually seen her in. I am curious to see her with other roles. I will say, in all fairness, because of things we learn about this character, that sort of flatness could be an intentional choice, but my gut's telling me that's giving her too much credit. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on her, is that. Then outside of the actors, the movie, it just does such a great job of making almost everyone feel so weird and suspicious right away. You know that something is going on. You know some other shoe is going to drop. And you're just waiting for it. And the movie, it's well made. The set design, sound design. I'm not a big technical movie guy. I come at this more from a script writing, acting standpoint. And from those standpoints, this movie, it's incredibly well made. It's incredibly well done. It's very smartly written. These characters go on a journey that is big but makes sense. And yeah, I'm running out of ways I can talk about this movie without going into more spoiler territory, but it's incredibly well done. I guess I will also just say this is a movie that doesn't have just one big twist. It has like 2, if not 3 big twists. And this is a movie where you know that at some point things are going to go kind of wrong. You suspect that probably at least one of these characters is not going to make it out of here alive. But the who and how and what, it just goes so farther than I was expecting. It goes so much darker and nastier and bloodier than I was expecting. And you know what? I'm someone who probably watches too much time watching movies and TV and playing video games and all that. And one of the results of that is that very, very little actually surprises me these days. It is rare that a movie genuinely surprises me. And this movie genuinely surprised me at least twice. There's at least two standout moments where this movie truly, truly surprised me and did things I was not expecting, took me to places I did not think we were going to go, and I have to give it a lot of credit for that. So, for a movie like this, a lot of the impact of it is going to depend on its ability to surprise you, for you to not guess what's going to happen. And unfortunately, one of these big twists I did guess very early on into it. That's really the only negative I have to say about this movie, is that in a movie with several big twists, one of the big twists I did see coming from very, very early on. But even then, I think there's two types of predictable when it comes to stories, whether it's a book, movie, video game, whatever. There's predictable because it's just lazy, cliche storytelling. And then there's predictable because it follows the laws of reality. There's predictable because it understands human nature in a very real way. And look, you don't have to study human history, you don't have to study human literature all that long to start seeing the same patterns over and over again. You start realizing there are really only so many personality types, there are only so many types of people in the world. And when you start getting intimately familiar with certain types of people, you can just recognize them immediately. And unfortunately, my life has led me to be rather intimately familiar with some really not good people in certain ways. And because of my real life experience, I was able to peg one of these characters for what they really were pretty much immediately. And so that does kind of diminish the impact of the movie. But even with that, I was able to appreciate how authentically that character was written. I was able to appreciate the craft of the story. And thankfully, there were other twists after that that I did not see coming, that genuinely surprised me, but still worked really, really well. So, excellent movie. Even if you think you know where it's going and you're right, there still are parts of it that might surprise you. So, well done. Very, very well done movie. Now to go into the true spoiler section of it. So, this twist I just mentioned, the one I guessed very early on, the husband. Pretty much the second he came on screen, I knew, okay, as crazy as the wife already seems, because it doesn't take long at all, literally first day, you see how fucking crazy Nina is going, and it's like, oh god, what have we gotten ourselves into? But then this guy comes along, and not only is he the owner of this house, which I understand not everyone has had some of the experiences with rich people that I've had personally, but you just look at some of the files that are leaking right now. Just look at the entirety of human history. Look at so many stories. How often are rich people painted as the good guys? I'm telling you, rich and powerful people, 90% of the time, are demented, degenerate fucking weirdos. So just someone even owning this type of house, this type of mansion, gated mansion with its own private staff, is an immediate massive red flag to me. You know, if someone's described as a pillar of the local business community, fucking run. 999 times out of 1,000, run for your fucking life, I'm telling you. And then even if you don't have my personal disdain for the rich drilled into you, which you should, but even if you don't have that drilled into you yet, he's just too perfect. In real life, if someone is too perfect, it's kind of scary. It's unnerving. It's not natural. And especially in a movie like this, where everyone seems sus, where you know something's going up with Sydney Sweeney and why didn't she want to use her actual history for the resume? Why is she having to check in with parole? What did she fucking do? We see the wife is going off the rails. We see even the kid is weird as hell. And then this one guy at the center of all this is just calm and understanding and empathetic and just a dream guy. No. No. This is not real. Like, this is what I mean by the twist was predictable, but not in a bad way. Because if this hadn't been the way it went, if it really was that he was just such a sweet, innocent guy and the crazy wife was manipulating him, that would have been god-awful storytelling, and I would not have respected this movie or the movie praising. I would not have respected this movie or the people praising it, you know? So, yeah, I do wish they had given him a few more obvious flaws in his character early on, because that would have made him more grounded and more realistic as a human being. As it is, he is suspiciously perfect. And of course, that shoe does drop, and it drops in a big, big way. Now, I will say that when they go into that, it goes in a much more twisted place than I thought. Like, the first wife getting locked up, okay, I could see that. Even the thing of him, like, making her pluck the hairs out of her head, it's extreme, but I could see it. But when he escalates to having Millie have to carve the lines into her stomach, oh shit, that is an escalation. That is a terrifying escalation. And I mean, if he's willing to do that, what else is he willing to do? And then with the way it turns on him is so satisfying. When he has to rip his own fucking tooth out, I had, I'm not gonna lie, I was covering my eyes in the movie theater. I did not need to see that in graphic detail. And I'm hearing, everyone, and people are cheering it on, because it's uncomfortable, but I mean, after what this guy did, having the tables really turn on him, it is satisfying. It is weird and sick and twisted for self-mutilation to ever be a satisfying thing to watch, but I mean, he earned it. He really, really earned it with this. Now, I will say that the truth about Nina, that was what I did not see coming. See, I thought what was going on, especially once we learned that the daughter is not in fact his biological daughter, and that bothers him on some level. At that moment, I thought, okay, so he has gaslit her into craziness in order to drive her out. At the same time, here comes this new girl who's clearly his type. He clearly has a thing for these kind of curvy blonde ladies. And she wants kids. She's fertile. She can give him that family. So just watch him take her and make her his new wife, pump a few kids out of her, and then watch him go with a new housemaid and kind of repeat the cycle over again. That's where I thought this movie was going. And instead, the twist that Nina was not even crazy. Or, look, after everything she's been through, she probably has some sort of traumatic stress disorder. That would not surprise me at all. But she's sane. And she knows what she's doing. And that is such a brilliant freaking twist. And again, the way that Amanda Seyfried plays it, where it's believable and it immediately makes everything she did before make so much more sense. Where it's like, okay, she was probably letting real frustration out, but she wasn't crazy. This was a calculated plan of a desperate woman who needed to get her own safety. So yeah, the final twists in this movie are really, really satisfying. And then once we know all that, and suddenly we've got all three parties coming to the house, at that point, I had no idea what was going to happen. At that point, I knew at least one of these people was going to die, maybe multiple, maybe all of them are going to die. I don't know what's going to happen. So yeah, it's I really appreciate a movie that can genuinely subvert my expectations. And man, this did that in spades. So I'm really glad that this movie was a big success, that lots of people went out to the theater to see it. I think I've heard they've already greenlit a sequel, because I do believe there are sequels to the book this is based off of. So overall, I like this movie a lot. I highly recommend it. Give it a chance if this is your sort of thing at all. Hope you guys take care, and I'll see you all next time. Until then, stay sane, stay human.